for Edward's psychic medium.
Howdy, Janine. How are you going?
Good, good. Don't we look fancy today with our backgrounds? We look really good. It's a very hot day here on the Gold Coast. I'm having a nice water today.
I've got my CUPPA.
What are you drinking?
Yeah, because we've had in Victoria, we suddenly become cool from a really stinking hot day yesterday, and now we're cool today. So that's Victoria for you, but that's okay. I don't mind. 40 degrees is a bit much for me.
Now, I had a dream last week that we needed to do a video. So I had a dream that you rang me up and said it's time we did a video. So I came up with a subject. Now, I've picked out this subject because you and I have people who ask us this all the time, or it's a grey area, and on Facebook you see lots of people trying to work out if they're psychic. How can they get psychic? Who is a psychic and who isn't? So topic of the day is who is psychic and who is not, and what does it mean to be psychic? It is different from being a psychic, don't you think?
Yes, yes. It's such a big topic, really, and it's like putting your hand on a hot stove. Sometimes it can be very controversial. So you can have psychics, you can have practicing psychics, you can be psychic, you can be intuitive, you can be a medium, and probably lots of other things. You can be clairvoyant and clairaudient and all that. But let's just lump it into psychic as a word.
Yep.
And I think most of us are psychic in our own ways. But I think as to whether you can do readings or whether you can actually pinpoint what people need to know, may be a harder gift to have or to develop.
Yeah.
And I think, you've found in astrology that a lot of people have to have the planets in the right place, I think, don't they? The right house.
Yeah. So that's what I thought I'd talk about. So maybe you can tell us what you think the difference is between being psychic, having psychic qualities, and being a psychic as a career.
Good question. So, as you know, I was trained by spirit initially. I didn't even know I was psychic. I just thought I was naturally a know-all, and people considered me a know-all. And I even had in my 20s a friend's mother tell me she could never have me as a friend. And when I asked her why, she said, because everything I say is true and comes out correct. And I was so shattered by that, I repressed my gift for about 10 years because I just thought, well, obviously people hate it, so I'm not going to use it, which is really sad, but that's the way it is. But the difference is that once spirit taught me how to use it to help people, then it was developed and appreciated, I guess, more. But in general, I meet some fabulous people who are genuinely, unbelievably psychic, but don't want to use it.
Yeah.
You get a lot like that who don't want to use it, don't want to use it for public, don't want to use it as even a hobby, right? And I think that happened a lot in the early part of the 19th century, 20th century, 1950s, 60s. There was probably a lot of gifted people around, but they did it for hobby, or they were known as the mother or grandmother or the neighbour that knew things. Today, of course, everybody wants to be a working psychic.
Why do you think that is? Because, my grandmother used to say, oh, I'm a bit tinny,
Yes.
She used that term like she knew stuff, and I reckon she was a bit tinny as well. But all of a sudden, since the 1990s self-development movement, New Age movement, everybody wants to be a psychic. Now, why do you think that's happened?
I think that I really feel maybe because women became more empowered, and I think women were more validated for having these sensitivities. So don't forget, our sensitivities as women were dismissed as emotional,
Hysterical.
I mean, if you had bad periods, early 20, you were considered an hysteria. Hysterical person. So, they use those sort of words. So if you had psychic abilities and saw spirit in that, of course you were mentally unwell.
Yeah.
And
true.
I think really it was the development of women being more empowered and validating our gifts, which are different from men, but similar. And I also think it was because people like John Edwards, some of the healers like Matthew Manning and all that from England started to come to the fore. So I really think, again, unfortunately, but I'm very grateful to them, that the men came forward and started saying, I'm the psychic and I'm a healer and I'm proud of it. A bit like the gay movement, I'm gay and I'm proud of it.
Yeah.
They started saying I'm psychic and I'm proud of it. And I think that opened the door. And then eventually, as women became more confident and they followed these guys, and they started to teach, I think a lot of women said, well, I have this ability too. I want to stand up. And I think that's what happened.
Interesting. A lot of people ask me this question, just to change the subject. Yeah. Are you a psychic? So obviously I'm an astrologer. Are you a psychic? And I do have to point out that they're very different. Because you do astrology or numerology or you're a naturopath or you're whatever, doesn't mean you're a psychic. So I make that very clear. And I also say I have my moments of psychic ability, which is being human. The difference for me is most of my psychic moments are during a reading rather than in my personal life. So I wish they were more moments outside of my professional reading life. Do you have that experience too? That you're more psychic during a reading than not?
Yes, for sure. But for me, I'm always immersed in the spirit world, and even more now I'm older. I just accepted it. It always surprises me that people don't believe in the spirit world. They don't believe in life after death. I always think, what? For me, it's so normal now. It's part and parcel of my being. I don't even query it. My biggest struggle, I think, with being psychic or having this ability was trust. Am I getting the right information? Am I not getting the right information? And for years, I got in my own way. My mental health got in my own way, which blocked a lot of the truism that I got. So now I've worked out that I've got to get out of my own way and just give it. It turns out to be right, not all the time, but most of the time. And so, and I think that's hard. Now, with you, regarding you, I do think you are psychic.
Can be.
I do think you do hone in on things pretty well when you're doing a reading, and whether it's with astrology or with your cards. And I also think perhaps as a naturopath, you would use that intuitive forbearing in your work to hone in on what the problem really is. And I think there's a lot of sensitive people go into the helping professions and are able to, have that gut feel. And you can call that psychic, or you can call that intuition, or whatever you want to do.
Who was the person who was the medical medium who in the 1990s? What was her name? She grew up with the nuns. Caroline Meese.
Yes.
Now, that was one of the movements that started in the 90s, and it exploded. Her psychic ability to see through your body and tell you what was wrong with you. Yeah. So she was a medical intuitive / psychic. Now, it was so fascinating after that. She was such a charismatic woman in public speaking and in writing. She had a fabulous chart for publishing and public speaking, which I think was her biggest success. And all of a sudden, everybody wanted to be like her, didn't they? And everybody was trying to contact their psychic ability, especially with health issues. And I found all that fascinating because 99% of those people had no talent whatsoever for the subject. Don't you think?
I think I've never been interested in medical intuition, psychic stuff at all. And I don't know why, because I've been in the health industry as well for yet so many decades.
You do it anyway.
I don't understand why I haven't, but it just doesn't interest me. So with Carolyn Miss, is it? Miss or Nice, whatever her name is, she just broke open that door. And that's what I was saying before. You know, the guys, John Edwards, what's that girl that was on The Medium? They did name escapes me. You know, they did an Alison Dubois. You know, like she broke open a lot of things. I think that show really helped. Then we had shows about the three sisters who were witches. That really helped. And you had Sabrina and all that in the 90s and I think the early 2000s all broke open and made it publicly more acceptable.
Yeah, that's so true.
These pioneers, in their way, whether they were good, bad, or indifferent, opened the doors for more acceptable.
True. But what I've found, if you look at real psychic people and their life, they've had really difficult lives, most of them, unless you become rich and famous. They've had a lot of adversity. They've fought against all manner of existences, even abuse, and you really wouldn't want to be a psychic with the life history that they often have. I mean, it's not an easy life. Do you think?
I always used to say when I was doing healing all those decades, people say, oh, I want to do what you do. And I say, be very careful because it's not an easy life. There's been nothing that people don't come to me just about, not everything, but 80% that I haven't been put through to get that so I can develop that empathy for others. And truly, if you live a very easy life, you live in a life where you're traveling the world, there's no problems for you, you don't have anything wrong, there's no hiccups in your life, you aren't going to make a very good psychic, you know, counsellor, medium, stroke, healer. You're just not. Yeah. Because you would never be able to put yourself into those people's shoes and to be able to know what it feels like. You know, the disappointments in life, the hardships, the letdowns, the money problems. If you haven't had all that, you don't have that empathy. And I think that's really important to be a really good psychic. That's part of your destiny. You know, it's part of your destiny, I think.
That's right. I do notice that there are a lot of wealthy people who've risen up in business.
Yes.
And they're entrepreneurial. They might have done well in the stock market or investment or risk-taking speculations, and they have something that isn't normal. They have the sixth sense, they have a psychic ability, and they know it. When you ask them about it, they know they've got it, and they trust it. And that's really fascinating because they don't want to be a psychic, but they know they are psychic when it comes to business, and those people do really well.
Well, business people are well known. They'll never tell you, but they're well known. Now, I read a story that JP Morgan himself, is well known, and he has told people, not many, but I did read about it, that when he knows he's on a really good investment, a really good thing, he used to get backaches until he got that backache, and then he know he's on the right track.
Yeah.
Yes. When he invested, his backache went. So
incredible.
That was his psychic sign.
That's a great example of how you can be psychic and channel it into your area of specialty. It could be business, it could be school teaching, it could be plumbing. You could still have a sixth sense, a psychic trait, and you use it in your area of talent. You don't have to do it for a living like we do.
You take Tesla. So Tesla was that great inventor. So he said he always saw it in his mind in 3D. So he could look at all his inventions inside out in 3D. That's clairvoyant. That's clairvoyant at a high level. So if he didn't become an inventor, maybe he would have been an outstanding clairvoyant. So, like that.
It's a good point that a lot of the great visionaries of life had that ability to either prophesy, see in the future, visualize the truth or whatever, which I don't know if we sort of think of that as psychic ability, but it is. Yeah. And, Einstein was a Pisces at the end of the day. Einstein was half in this world, half out. And without that sort of loss of boundaries, you wouldn't be able to visualize incredible things. So it's a fascinating area. You have always said, when it comes to getting a reading with you, you've always said, if you don't want the truth, don't come. It's a very hard reality, but it is true. If you're going to be a good psychic, you have to tell the truth. And before someone has a reading, they do have to ask themselves, am I ready for this?
Yep.
Now, on the other hand, as an astrologer, I can just pick out all the good bits. If I think the client is not capable of the truth, I can move into a more optimistic area. But you have the very hard job of delivering what you deliver.
Yeah.
It's not as negotiable for you.
Well, I try and put it in a way that's soft as much as I can, depending on the personality I'm dealing with. It is difficult when you have to give news that they're not expecting or they don't want to hear. If it's really difficult, well, then I probably wouldn't tell them much, I guess, if they're not accepting anything.
You've often said that in the past you've had difficulties in friendships, and I can see how hard it could get if your friends are not resilient. Now, I have to say, I think you're a great asset to my life. And a great investment, but if I wasn't strong in my understanding of things, I think I could take offense at your feedback or run away from it or just go, oh, you're mad, I'm out of here.
Yeah, it's a difficult gift. Because sometimes you think, well, I'll say nothing and just go, I don't know. And I did that. I just still do that. I don't know. I have no idea. Because sometimes you just get over trying to wrestle with that all the time. So
yeah, that's right.
Sometimes you just got to say, well, I don't know. Other times I give information and I'll say, look, you've got a couple of years to do this or do that. No, don't do it. So you just got to sometimes feed it. I feed it very softly. I guess I'm a different personality. I like people to tell me straight so I can deal with it. But I've learned over the years not everyone can deal with things, and that's okay. They might need crumbs, and that's okay. I can do that. And I don't want to hurt them. I just want them to be happy. It's such a difficult situation if it's not good news.
Delicate. It's delicate.
Really try and avoid it. Now, I remember when you gave me a reading on my chart, and you said to me, not this Christmas, last Christmas, it was going to be extremely difficult, and it was, you know, blah, blah, blah. And I went, oh. But because I knew, I handled it in a different way. I completely changed my attitude. I completely if anything went wrong, I took a completely different road, and a complete high road, and just let it fall off me instead of reacting, because I knew this was a difficult period for 2 or 3 months. And so I like that, because then it puts me in charge. I can handle it. But some people might have fallen apart and not handle that. And so it's really difficult, isn't it, to say what you need to say in a way that you can handle it.
People say they want to know. Not sure that they do. 50% of the time they do.
Yeah.
50% of the time they don't know that they don't want to know. And that's tricky for us. What I wanted to do before we finish is just have a look at, I'm going to share the screen. We're going to just have a look at what we look for in astrology. Can you see that?
Yes.
I'm going to pop up in the middle.
Yep.
So when we look at an astrology chart, everyone's got strengths and weaknesses. And I just wanted to show you what I look at. If you were to say to me, am I psychic? I'm going to point out some of the things that I'd be looking for.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, the first thing is the structure of your chart. So the chart's broken down into 12 zones or 12 houses. And over at 9 o'clock is the most important part of the chart. And there's a sign here usually.
Yeah.
Now, the most psychic people I know have Scorpio rising or Pisces rising. So if you look at your own chart, the sign right here at 9 o'clock is what I'm looking for. Now, you have Scorpio rising. John Edwards has Scorpio rising, and a lot of very, very perceptive people have that.
Yeah.
So your rising sign is your relationship with the environment, and if your skin is very thin, it will be water at this sign, and particularly Scorpio and Pisces. I'd have to say Scorpio rising people manage their psychic ability a lot better than Pisces. Pisces rising people have phenomenal intuitive powers, but they also pick up all the rubbish at the same time, like vacuum cleaners, and they have a lot of trouble deciphering between what's true and what's not true, and they can get a bit unstuck. So I think that the Scorpio rising people can harness it and discriminate a lot better with the psychic information. I think they both have incredible caliber.
I think Pisceans are more emotional, and Scorpios are sensitive, but they, I think they can learn quicker with it. They can harness their emotions in a bit more quickly.
And push back too. So if a Scorpio rising person doesn't like something, they'll push back and cut off. And that's a healthy thing. Pisces can't push back. So Pisces rising people are quite vulnerable. And these are the people that get a lot of psychic attack. Now, I do think Pisces rising people are quite cursed in lots of ways, because it's a tough gig being that open and that psychic, and it's just rampant in their life. There's not a lot of boundaries. So those two, very common. Now, I have to point out, I don't have any of these traits that we're talking about, but this is what I've seen with pure psychic ability, if not people who become psychics as a profession. Scorpio rising people are also very good at the healing arts. So very good with body work and massage, you know, kinesiology and all of those things. Pisces rising being much better at the arts, music, vibrational work, you know, artistic work, musical work. So that's the rising sign. The next thing I look for is, where are your planets gathered? Now, this area here between 9 and 10 o'clock is the 12th house, And I call it the psychic house. But psychic in a sense that the 12th house is the other world. It's the world on the other side. So you can be psychic in business, but these people are connected to the other realms. You could say other planets, other galaxies, you know, the world of the dead, whatever worlds you want to believe in. You could even say heaven, or you could say hell. So people with planets in this area are connected to other realms, okay? Now, I know, Jennifer, you've got a full 12th house, so you're very, very connected to the other side. So these people have 1 foot in, 1 foot out. I mean, not everybody with a full 12th house is like this, but people like David Bowie, you know, 1 foot in, 1 foot out. These are the trippers of our reality. And some people are just incredibly reclusive because they get all this information from the other side, and they may not necessarily become psychics or healers, but they're trying to process all that information.
You know, Reeves has that. Remember when we did him?
Yes, yeah. So this is where, you know, psychic information just drops in to someone's reality from the other side. They don't even create it themselves, this information. It just falls in from another place. So extremely good for mediumship and psychic ability. If you do not use this healthily, it becomes unhealthy and results in mental illness, or it could result in some sort of imprisonment or some sort of very negative life experience. So it is much better for these people to get in touch with their psychic world. The next best house to have planets in would be the 8th house, which of course you have as well, Jennifer. You've got Jupiter and Moon. The 8th house is the house of death, which means these people are very good at the topic of death, near-death experiences, after-death experiences, and talking to the dead. Now, not all psychic people want to talk to the dead, right? So you can be a psychic, but never be a medium. People who are mediums talk to the dead. So people with the 8th house are very good mediums rather than psychics, because they're not scared of dead people, basically. They're not scared of the process of talking to people who are ghosts. The 8th house is also the house of magic and the occult. So people who have planets here have a natural affinity for, you know, all the voodoo and all the, you know, numerology, astrology, numbers, symbols, and all taboo subjects. Now, being a psychic medium has been a taboo in many cultures, especially in our white Christian Anglo-Saxon culture. It's become a taboo, and even till recent years. So these people have the confidence to go into dark or hidden places to find truth. It's also a house of truth. Yeah. So these people are very blessed in that they pursue truth. And that's also part of being a psychic medium, don't you think? Having an interest in the truth and also having a talent for finding the truth. They've got a talent for finding skeletons in closets, for finding treasure, for finding information that's buried. So those psychics you see on TV that are looking for dead bodies, or they're looking for some sort of resolution of mystery, they have planets in the 8th house. You have to have a curiosity for dark and interesting taboo subjects. So that's the 8th house. Now, people who are very good healers have different qualities. They have things in the 6th house, 6th house of health, 6th house of service, and self-sacrifice. So let's not forget the healers who maybe have some psychic abilities as well. These are the people who are the hands-on people, the masseurs, the chiropractors, you know, the kinesiologists, etc. They may have a little bit of the other houses as well. Now, I don't have any of that, but I do have a loaded ninth house. So some of us have more strengths in slightly different areas. The ninth house is religion, education, philosophy, and learning. So these are really the old school priests of society who can research and learn wisdom. So they're like I said, they're the philosophers, and you do see a lot of astrologers and people who are into the scholastic side of, you know, the occult world. They often have a strong ninth house. So they're perhaps the 4 different areas that you see with psychic people. Now, there's psychic planets as well. Jupiter's very psychic, and whenever you see Jupiter on the ascendant, you think this person's very blessed with not only luck and good timing, but visionary potential. People that have their moon on the ascendant are empaths, and they feel everything. They feel everyone else's issues. They're in touch with emotional energy, so they can read people really well. People that have some of the big planets here, like Uranus and Pluto, these people are psychic when it comes to collective affairs. So they're psychic with politics, you know, psychic with perhaps even business, if it's, you know, on a bigger scale, psychic with their timing when they're out and about in the world. So look, everyone can be psychic, but if you're going to harness it and channel it in certain areas, that's what I'm looking for.
Okay. That's really interesting. Really interesting. Wow. Okay. Well, I'll keep my eyes open for that. But yes, certainly. So if people have, say, planets in the 12th and the 8th house, but they're not interested in psychic work or believe in the afterlife, how does that fit?
Well, they might be nurses, for example.
They're not, so they're business people.
Oh, business people. Well, I would say they might be good at aspects of business where they have to predict the future, like the stock market, where you've got to predict outcomes.
Okay.
That would probably be the best example, or investors.
So do you think also they may use
who have to?
So they use intuition or knowing in helping their business.
Yeah, and also, well, it depends what else they've got. If you've got a bit of 4th house, you might be good at real estate predictions. Okay. You know, where you think, oh, well, that particular suburb is going to grow with investments, and no one else thinks that, but you do, and you end up being right. Or, you know, you've got 2 businesses you want to buy and you've got to choose between the 2. The psychic person will choose the better business for no particular reason. Because investors can make investments just going on hunches, and there's no rationale to them. So definitely it can be channeled into business, but like I said, if they're not into business, they may channel it into their career. They may be nurses who don't believe they're psychic, but have a knowingness about what's wrong with people and how to fix them. Palliative care nurses who have a lot of training in the dying, but are not necessarily interested in talking to spirits, but know when someone's about to die, just because that's their talent to know that.
Okay, so it's interesting. So people don't necessarily have to become a psychic or a medium. They can direct it into whatever career that they're looking for.
Definitely. And that's what I would say to all those people who want to be psychics. I would say, are you really sure you want that? Are you tough enough for that? What about being psychic in your own areas? What about being psychic in real estate? What about being a psychic mum?
Yeah.
You know, what about being a psychic journalist?
Yeah.
You know, what about being a psychic electrician?
Yeah.
And you figure out what's wrong with people's electrical wires. I mean, we all need that ability. We all need people around us with that ability.
Yeah. It's funny, you know, you read stories about, you know, mechanics or who just know what's wrong with the car. No one.
Oh, don't we all want one of those? They're the most precious people.
The problem, and you just go, how do you know that? Oh, I don't know, it's experience. But really, they just seem to have that knack, don't they? And they're using their intuition, psychic ability for that, I'm sure.
Perhaps we can just finish on a story of a friend of mine, and he might actually watch this. In the 80s, I think, and early 90s, he worked for one of those big companies. I think it was Xerox, and they invented photocopiers and early technology and machinery. He worked for Xerox, no particular training, but he had a knack for fixing photocopiers. And he didn't know what was wrong with them. He had no background in electrics. But what he worked out he could do was he knew what was wrong with them, but he couldn't explain it to anyone. So he'd go into a room and he'd say, look, I need my own space here, and shut the door. And he'd put his hand on the photocopier and get a message as to what was wrong with it. And then go and stick an instrument in there and fiddle with it, and all of a sudden it worked. It was his secret healing talent. And he was so good at it, he got big reputation, on a good wage. And he tells the story how they got him an apprentice. And they said, you're so good at this, we've given you an apprentice. He said, I don't want an apprentice, because he couldn't tell anybody how he did it. So he used to make the apprentice stand outside while he shut the door. Very funny story.
That is an incredible story.
It's a good example of how you can be psychic in your very mundane jobs.
Yeah.
And it's incredibly valuable.
It is. It's such a great example that, you know, we don't all have to be readers. We can use our psychic abilities to better our own lives.
Yeah, which reminds me, you know, when I've got something wrong with my car at the moment, and no one seems to be able to have a go at fixing it. And I am looking for a psychic mechanic, and I can't find one. And there's got to be one out there. It's like trying to find a good psychic medium. The right one's got to be out there.
Well, if someone knows a psychic mechanic up in the Gold Coast, let Janine know. She's desperate.
All right. Well, that's been a great conversation.
Look, thanks for that, Janine, and we'll chat again soon.
All right. See you later.
Bye.